I always set my coffee mug just so, 2 centimeters, give or take a millimeter, from the right edge of my keyboard. That's my spot. Every morning, for years. Habit, I guess. Anna often called it an obsession, a little playful jab. Sometimes she'd move it, just to mess with me, and I'd grumble, but I always put it back. Today, though, this morning, it was on the left, way over, almost touching my mouse pad. And it felt warm. Not piping hot, but definitely warm. I hadn't even brewed the coffee yet. The machine was still cold, dark. I just stood there in the kitchen, staring down at it. A plain white ceramic mug, my favorite, empty, warm, on the wrong side. A knot formed itself, tiny at first, right behind my ribs. "Anna," I muttered, just to the quiet apartment. "Seriously?" I knew she liked her little jokes. Maybe she'd gotten up early, done something in the kitchen, moved it, poured herself a cup, and forgotten, then gone back to bed. But she was a journalist, a night owl. Early mornings weren't her thing, not usually. I shook my head, a little smile playing on my lips, and nudged the mug back to its proper place. It was just Anna, nothing else. The air outside had that crisp New York bite typical of late autumn, promising winter. I pulled my jacket tighter as I descended into the subway station. The usual rush-hour chaos was already in full swing. The rumble of trains in the distance, the muffled conversations, the screech of brakes. But as my train pulled in, or rather, as it lumbered in, there was something off. The rails groaned, not the familiar metal-on-metal grind. This was deeper, like a creature in pain. A long, drawn-out moan that seemed to come from under the tracks, under the very rock the station was carved into. The train rocked, harder than usual, a shuddering violent enough to make a few people stumbling against each other. My hand instinctively went to the overhead bar, gripping tight. This wasn't the old New York subway tremor I felt every day. This was different. A cold, damp gust of air swept through the packed carriage, raising goosebumps on my arms. Not just a draft from the tunnels. This felt heavy, like a breath from somewhere dark, deep down. I frowned, trying to dismiss it. "Damn old train," I mumbled, mostly to myself. Always something breaking. Honestly, the MTA needed a complete overhaul. That had to be it. Just another sign of a decaying system. When I finally stepped out onto the street, blinking against the gray city light, the world seemed to tilt. My stop was near the office, on a busy street, usually teeming with life and the din of traffic. Today, it was quieter, unsettlingly so. And then I looked up. The office building directly across, the one with the sleek glass facade and the ugly but iconic gargoyles near the roofline, my old stomping ground before I shifted to urban planning consultations, was changing. A crack, really a fissure, was tearing its way across its concrete face. But it wasn't just a static fracture. No, it looked like a wound. A jagged, angry cut that was trying to knit itself together, but instead, it warped. The concrete buckled, oozing a finer, pasty gray substance that seemed to almost stretch. The glass windows, which usually reflect the sky and the city's frantic energy, were now dark, empty. They looked at me, I swear, like so many vacant eyes. And the columns, the sturdy, proud concrete pillars supporting the entrance canopy, began to twist, rippling. They weren't crumbling, they were flexing, like tendons, like bones under skin. Then, slower than gravity should allow, but with chilling certainty, the upper floors of the building tilted. Not a collapse, no. It was a deliberate, almost graceful lean, A deliberate act. The concrete groaned, the steel shrieked, but it wasn't random. It was a calculated descent. Down, down onto the street below, crushing cars, lampposts, whatever was in its path. It made a deep, grinding sound, like teeth on stone. People were screaming, a raw, guttural noise that ripped through the cold air. Total chaos erupted. I saw it, but my mind, it just couldn't process it. Buildings don't just do that. They don't move. They don't have intent. But this did. Every slow, groaning shift, every deliberate crush, it felt like it had a purpose. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum in my chest. Panic, cold and sharp, cut through the shock. I had to get away. I had to. I spun around, seeing a metal service door, probably leading to some back alley or maintenance stairwell. Instinct just screamed, "Open it, now!" I lunged, throwing my full weight against the heavy-duty steel. It didn't budge, not an inch. My breathing hitched. I cursed, a short, sharp burst of frustration, and slammed my fist against it. This time, something gave. A tiny, almost imperceptible gap opened, just a sliver. But then it snapped shut with sudden, brutal force. My fingers were already there, pressed against the edge. A searing pain shot up my hand. I cried out. The door, it pinched my fingers. Just for a second. But it clamped down. It then recoiled, just a fraction, as if it had made its point. A smell hit me then, through that tiny, malevolent gap. Musty, like old water and decaying leaves. But underneath that, a sharp, coppery tang. And wet concrete. The smell of something that had been buried, now breathing again. "What the hell is going on?" I gasped, clutching my injured hand. Blood was already welling up, a bright red streak against my pale skin. This isn't natural. This isn't an earthquake. What is this? My voice cracked. I looked around, desperate, seeing only more collapsing structures, more dust, more screaming people running in every direction, like ants in a disturbed nest. Then my phone buzzed, a frantic vibration in my pocket. Anna, thank God. I fumbled for it, my hands shaking. A voicemail, her voice choked, almost unrecognizable. "Ethan, where are you? I'm trapped. The building, it's moving. It's like an animal. You have to." Her voice cut out, abruptly, replaced by a deep, rumbling growl that vibrated through the phone itself, followed by a sickening screech of metal. The line went dead. No, goddammit! I squeezed the phone so hard I thought it might crack. My palm was slick with sweat. Anna, my Anna, was in there. I looked up. My gaze shot across the city, past the plumes of dust and the slowly falling debris. Her building, the towering skyscraper where she worked, a beacon of glass and steel. Once a symbol of human ingenuity, now its windows, hundreds of them, seemed to be blinking, slowly, deliberately. And from its very core, a sound resonated, deep and heavy, thrumming through the air, through my bones. A colossal, slow beat, like a monstrous heartbeat. It wasn't a metaphor. What she said, it wasn't an exaggeration. The city, these buildings, they were hunting. "It's coming," I whispered, barely audible over the distant screams.
For all of us. I scrambled, finding a shaky refuge in the shadowed alcove of what used to be a coffee shop, now mostly rubble. My fingers, still throbbing, flew across my tablet. I brought up the city map, my go-to urban planning app. I zoomed in on Anna's location, frantically searching for safe routes, shortcuts, back alleys I knew like the back of my hand. I was an architect. I knew this city's bones, its veins. I could navigate this. I had to. But on the screen, the familiar grid began to distort. The digital streets rippled. The neatly defined blocks of buildings shifted, pulsed. Not in static blips or data errors, no. They moved. They actually moved. A vivid, crimson line appeared, glowing, pulsing. It wasn't a street. It snaked its way across the digital map, not following any existing infrastructure, but forming a bizarre, organic-looking network, like a massive, pulsing artery under the earth. It led straight to Anna's building. I stared, my heart hammering. I tried to tap it, to drag it away, to delete the anomaly. My screen flickered. The map dissolved into static, then reformed, uglier, more twisted. And from the tablet itself, a sound. Not the usual digitized ping or notification tone, no. This was a dry, rasping whisper, like grains of sand rubbing together. "Every road you lay, a vein," it hissed. The sound somehow bypassing the tablet speakers, resonating directly in my skull. I lurched back, dropping the tablet. It clattered against the broken pavement, but the image remained. The map wasn't just data. It was a terrifying, living diagram of something vast, of something that was breathing. And Anna's building, the skyscraper, was now a rapidly beating heart at its center, pulsating with that crimson line that connected it to everything. Fear, cold, and absolute washed over me.